the future of women's soccer, the present, and the future of women's soccer is in such an amazing place where I have done everything that I've needed to do. I have accomplished everything that I have come to do and achieved what I've needed to do.
Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show will be talking the U.S. men's national team disaster, Nations League, Alex Morgan saying goodbye, CR7 not saying goodbye, Apollo 13, Caleb Porter meltdown, American rebrand, U.S. women's national team Mount Rushmore, Sopranos, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you doing on this Monday, September 9th in the year 2024? And I see you once again have brought company.
Yes, I'm doing very well, particularly because we are joined once again by Stu Holden.
I'm trying to make this seat permanent right here, guys, putting down some roots.
You look good, and for those that are watching, you will see it's kind of the evolution of man, or the devolution of man, with Mosse over there being in the t-shirt and the hat, and then Stu more of a country clubbish sweater, cool guy fashion, and then me
you've gone
showing up in my suit today.
Buddy,
we're doing some marketing and promotion downstairs, so after this I got to go do something like that. So I dressed up for you, for those that watch, and for those that are just listening, you can feel the formality of what I am wearing. But we got ourselves a good show. Stu, welcome back to the show. Any of you guys watch anything interesting since we last spoke?
I'll go first.
Okay.
This past weekend, I watched this HBO two-part documentary on the making of The Sopranos, which I thought was terrific. As you know, I'm a big fan of the show. This year was the 25-year anniversary of when it first came on the air, 1999. Very interesting stuff. David Chase, a lot of fascinating stories about behind-the-scenes stuff that went on with that show, James Gandolfini and all the rest. I also watched another episode of Industry, which is a show that's functioning on an incredibly high level right now. I'm almost ready to have the Industry versus Succession debate.
Ooh,
they're very similar shows, same genre, and they're both terrific. And finally, we're taping this on Monday afternoon. Tonight is the premiere of the fourth and final season of My Brilliant Friend, a show that I love and that your wife loves, so I know she'll be watching tonight.
And speaking of family, I think you talked to my mother more than I actually do. She texted me the other day and said, I've finished whatever the show that she was watching that she had gotten as a recommendation from you. I need something else. And I said, well, why are you asking me? Go ask Mosse. And now she goes back and forth with you and figures it all out.
Yeah, we've been emailing the last few days. She asked for a rom-com TV show. I suggested Emily in Paris. She's evidently watching that. Okay. I also suggested Only Murders in the Building, which is this delightful show with Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez. So hopefully she checks that out as well.
Well, next time you talk to her, please tell her I love her. Stu, are you watching anything?
I'm going to just take it a different direction a little bit. I have not been watching any, series or documentaries. I've been watching a lot of sports, guys. Football is back, college football, NFL. I love the U.S. Open. We had two Americans in the final once again with Fritz and Pegula. And I just love this time of year. It's like sit on the couch and watch soccer all day, into football, into tennis, into NFL. And I just love being a couch potato. So that's all I got for you.
Anything to say about your Wolverines over there, Mosse?
Oh, yeah, let's bring that up.
Ouch, huh?
Oh, Michigan's done.
It was a good run.
Harbaugh got his first win with the Chargers yesterday, too. Man, rubbing it in.
Did your wife enjoy that game?
Oh, she loved it. She was reveling in it because she also went to UT for a couple of years and ended up graduating from UT. So she loved that her Texas Longhorns kicked the crap out of the Wolverines. And Ohio State, dare I say, got a pretty easy path to that championship this year. They'll find a way to blow it.
All right, I only have one thing. The Apollo 13 survival. We all remember the Apollo 13 movie with Tom Hanks, which was wonderful, about that near catastrophe with the Apollo 13. They've done a documentary here. It's on Netflix, and it is awesome in terms of the footage that they have. And they use live footage. They use live audio. There is some augmented stuff, and they announced at the beginning of it they've taken some things from other missions in order to fill in some gaps. But I thought it was, even though you know the outcome, I still thought it was fascinating. And the tension that they create in this documentary, I thought they did a really, really good job. That's called Apollo 13 Survival. So check out all of those things. Should we light this candle?
Let's
Light
do
it up.
All right. You heard us right off the top of the show with the clip from Alex Morgan. So let's get right to Alex Morgan, a living legend when it comes to the game, what she has done on the field, what she has done off the field, how important she has been, not just to women's soccer, not just to women's sports, but to sports in general. She retires 224 U.S. women's national team appearances, 123 goals, World Cups to her credit, gold medals to her credit, NWSL championships to her credit. And as we said, just goals and goals and goals on the field and off the field, really becoming iconic in terms of the things that she does, that she says. Obviously, the fight for equal pay and all that kind of stuff is all wrapped into this package that makes her, one, and maybe for some, the greatest women's national team player in history. Stu, you were down at her final game down in San Diego. How did that go?
So I decided to take my son down, which my daughter was very upset. She wanted to go to this game. But I just felt that, look, I know and I have a personal relationship with Alex and her husband, Servando. I've known her for a long time. I've followed her career on and off the field. And look, I think when a player of Alex Morgan's status retires from the game, we instantly kick into this gear of how can we judge and quantify and place them amongst the greatest players to have played, and where does she rank and all of these different things? And so I was thinking a lot about this both last night and even this morning in the aftermath, and thinking about the greatest women's players of all time, right? U.S. women players. So you have Christine Lilly, you have Mia Hamm, you have Abby Wambach, you have all these truly great women's players. And then I started to think about, where does Alex Morgan rank within that? So not only is she up there top 5 all time in goals and the amount of appearances, anytime she scored for the U.S. women's national team, they did not lose a game, 2 World Cups and Olympics and all of those things. And then I started to think, when we talk about legacies and people's impacts on the game on the field, but then also off the field, which is such a big part of the conversation when it comes to women's national team players and what they have fought for generations. And they're in a different period. Alex was in a different period, and she benefited from the 99ers, and I don't think we truly understood the impact of 99 until many, many years later. I think it'll be very similar with Alex Morgan and what she did in that fight for equal pay on and off the field, especially, and providing pathways, opportunities, and inspiring a younger generation of not just male, but female players that know that they can do this and they can do it at a high level. And so when I consider Alex Morgan and her legacy, I've got her up there in the conversation with Mia Hamm and perhaps one of the greatest to have ever done it.
Okay. All right. Well, you told me, and you just told us you don't want to do this, so let's definitely
do this. Let's do it. Yeah.
Rushmore. Okay.
Yeah.
For U.S. women, I have Mia Hamm. I have Abby Wambach. I have Hope Solo. And I think I'm going to put, and this is where it gets into impact that you made in terms of being famous, in terms
I just think it's total package. If you're going Mount Rushmore, it's total package.
Then I'm going to throw Carly Lloyd in there. So those are my 4 there. So the Julie Foudy's and the Brandi Chastain's and the Michelle Akers are not there. The Megan Rapinoe's not there, and obviously Alex is not there.
Yeah.
I'll go to Mosse while you get to think about this.
Well, first off, a big theme of this podcast today is aging stars knowing when is the right time to walk away. And for Alex Morgan, it was when your club team hires Landon Donovan. That's when. No, my Mount Rushmore for U.S. women would be Mia Hamm, Michelle Akers, Abby Wambach, and Carly Lloyd.
Ooh, okay. So no Hope Solo with you.
Yeah, you could make a very good argument for her. But, we're now debating whether Alyssa Nair has even surpassed Hope Solo, just speaking about goalkeepers. Sure. So, I don't know. There's so many to choose from. The U.S. women, I mean, that's just a juggernaut.
Stu, you got to do it, buddy. Let's see it.
I'm more than happy to do it, my friend. I have Mia Hamm, of course. I have Carly Lloyd, our wonderful friend. The third one is tough for me. Either Lily Akers. I'm going to go Akers, Michelle Akers, and then fourth is Alex Morgan. If we're talking total package of U.S. women of what they've done on and off the field, you cannot have that conversation with Alex Morgan without Alex Morgan in it. And she made her national team debut when she was still in college. She basically took the reins and was maybe unwillingly or at such a young age where she wasn't quite ready for that, and carried that torch forward and won back-to-back World Cups in 15 and 19. And I again, look, I watched yesterday at that game, and the amount of people that turned up, and young girls, older women, older men, younger men standing with signs. And the biggest theme was not even about just what she has done off the field. It was a thank you for the fight that she has endured off the field as well. And I don't think you can downplay when you're going through that type of scenario with all the distractions off the field to still do what you did on the field and take care of business on the field, and knowing that the better you do on the field, the more impact you're going to have off the field. And I think she recognized that from a very early moment in her career and took it all in stride. And to walk away, I still think she could have given a little bit more, maybe not at the national team level anymore. But, seeing her yesterday, taking her cleats and her shin guards off on the field and walking off to a very fitting celebration of her career. It wasn't a goodbye, because you're going to see a lot more of Alex Morgan in the game for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, we definitely wish her well off the field, and she's already off to the races when it comes to the business things that she has going forward. So I think she's going to make a big impact off the field as she continues on, and she's left it in a better place than when she started. And I think for any player, regardless of how famous they are, or how many goals they score, or how much money they make, or anything like that, that's what you want to do. And she and a whole generation of women that kind of grew out of that 99ers type of era and benefited from it, let's be honest, have taken it and moved it ahead. And I think that's what anybody wants when it comes to the sport. So good luck to her going forward. All right, that's the good part. Let's get to the bad, negative part. We all sat there and we watched this U.S. men's national team, which admittedly is in flux with still, as we record this here on Monday, September 9th, no coach having been named, although all indications are that Mauricio Pochettino will be the next coach. But we saw them play this game still under an interim coach, and we saw them crap the bed against none other than Jesse Marsh's led Canada. Okay, where do we start here? We talked a little bit about it, Stu and I, on air this weekend when we were doing Nations League. This was obviously not just a poor performance, but also a poor result. In a moment where we thought this U.S. team was going to step up and, given the positivity going forward of these changes that are happening, was going to show us a different look than the failure and the abysmal failure that was the team over the summer. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, losing to Canada 2-1. And not a back and forth type of affair. Canada was the better team from start to finish. Plenty of talent on the field when it comes to this U.S. team, and they looked completely lost. They looked completely rudderless. Ultimately, and this is where the sadness comes into play, this was a U.S. men's national team that, for me, looked soft and spoiled. And again, we talked about it on air. I hate to be grumpy old manning things, and I try so hard to not do it. But in this moment, this U.S. team looks that way to me. As I said, spoiled, and a team that is devoid of any type of energy. We did a Spaces this weekend, Mosse. One of the callers lamented the fact that he was watching our U.S. men's national team and was almost jealous of the fact that Canada was more American in the way that they played than the U.S. team. And while we've tried to evolve and move forward, I think at times we have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And it's not that we don't make mistakes or we don't sometimes go back in order to go forward, but this U.S. men's national team at this particular moment is anything but inspiring.
It was interesting. We saw in covering the UEFA Nations League this past weekend, teams with interim coaches like England and Denmark still play well. And to be fair, the U.S. played well under B.J. Callahan in the Nations League. So I think when you're talking about competitive matches. Players can still get up for games even when you have interim coaches. But the combination of it being a friendly with an interim coach, that seemed to affect the mindset of the U.S. players, because we talked about this on Saturday. The U.S. took the field for a sparring session. Canada took the field for a fight. There was a discernible intensity gap there. Canada really wanted to win that game. Hats off to them. They did. And by the way, last 8 meetings, U.S.-Canada, 3 wins apiece and 2 draws. While last 7 meetings, U.S. versus Mexico, 5 wins and 2 draws for the U.S. They're unbeaten. So we talk about possibly Canada supplanting Mexico as the chief rival in this region. I think we perhaps are seeing that happening, especially with the whole Jesse Marsch factor adding another layer to this rivalry now.
Yeah. Man, so much to talk about here, right? Like when we think about this game and what you and I have already talked about, and I've also tried to not grumpy old man this, and it's probably good that we're doing this a couple days later, because my blood was boiling watching that game, and I've tried multiple times to put myself back into the shoes of being a player in that situation and being in that locker room and trying to contextualize, am I being fair in the way in which I'm analyzing this? And you bring up a lot of good points, Mosse, about the circumstances. An interim head coach, when you think you're going to have Pochettino coaching the team, a friendly and no real stakes there, and missing Tim Weah and missing McKennie and missing Robinson and 3 key players, and then in front of a very sparse crowd in Kansas City on a hot day, and the U.S. lose to Canada. So those are the excuses, and I'm trying to balance, like, how much do I give weight to that versus the opposite? And I keep coming back to the fact that I'm done with these excuses. I'm done with giving a leash here when we're at a time where we're 2 years away from the biggest World Cup, the biggest sporting event this planet has seen, at a time when we're coming off of embarrassingly getting knocked out of the Copa América in the group stage, and wanting the leaders of this team, which guys are still in that camp. Christian Pulisic's, is at the heart of it. You have Tim Ream, you have experienced players still in that locker room. That's what you roll out against Canada, and that's what you're okay with, and we're going to go out and we're going to give that type of effort on home soil when we have an opportunity that we've got to make a statement here. Coach or no coach, this is going to be on the players ultimately to get this team out of it. And so look, Canada are in a good moment. They're coming off a positive Copa America. They have a lot of good momentum. They have a coach and a direction and a North Star that they're heading towards. And they see the positivity building. They were up for this, man, because they're trying to prove a point. We were not. So sure, we might get a response tomorrow against New Zealand, and that'll be great. And, we're going to win 3-4-0, maybe. That doesn't, bury what's underneath there. And so I want to fast forward this conversation now to the Pochettino era. Like, it's imminent. He's going to be announced today, tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Man, when he comes in, like, I want to care about this team, and I want to see some real changes that make me believe he can get this team back on track. Because I still believe we have talent. I don't think we're anywhere near as deep as we thought we were, and that's evident. But we still have enough guys from 11, 12, 13 that we should still have a very good team. I just don't think we're nearly as good as I thought we were maybe a year or two coming off the back of the World Cup.
You said this on air, and some people took, not offense, but came back at you. Do you still believe now, in the cold, harsh light of a new day and multiple days after the game, that the U.S. is better than Canada? And you just mentioned that maybe we're not as good as we thought they were. Is this American hubris? Is this American exceptionalism in the way that we are looking, this generation that's playing? They're almost all play over in Europe, and they almost all play for big teams and big leagues and all that kind of stuff, with all these different pathways and resources. Have we been delusional in the way that we've been thinking about this?
Okay, I mean, let's play a game here. Who would you take from both of you, from Canada into the starting lineup for the USMNT? Alfonso Davies is an easy one. Jonathan David?
I would take Jonathan David.
Yeah, I would take
Balogun.
David.
They play in the same league, and to me, David is the better player. So Canada does have something the U.S. doesn't have, which is an elite center forward.
So that's 2 players.
But would Jesse Marsch, given the opportunity, and I know it's American, all that kind of stuff, if he's going to a World Cup, would he rather go to the World Cup with this U.S. group of talent or with the Canadian group of talent? I still think that would be.
I still think he would take the U.S. team.
Absolutely.
As much as he's out there saying, I'd rather coach Canada in this moment. No, come on. But I also don't want to. you laid out the stats of the recent matches versus Canada. The Canada has really come a long way in the past decade. Thank you, Major League Soccer, by the way, for the amount of investment and development of their player pool. Large parts of that player pool was developed and still play in Major League Soccer. But I still think the U.S., out of 10 times in a competitive match, I think they would still beat Canada 7 times at least.
If you're a follower of the State of the Union, you will see in your feed a special edition, shall we say, of the State of the Union. And Stu and I are giving our 11s. But on this show, give us a couple of things that you would like to see, because we're recording this again before the New Zealand game. Some changes that you would like to see. I mean, when it really comes down to it, I think maybe Lund and definitely Schulte in goal were the only ones that shone. Mosse?
And by the way, Patrick Schulte being away on international duty had some ramifications for the Columbus Crew, which we'll get to later in the pod. But you're right. Schulte starts in goal over Matt Turner, but then at center back, it was still Richards and Ream. I would have liked to have seen Mikey Veras carry that same train of thought to center back and maybe give Austin Trusty a start. I want to get a look at somebody new there. I know I keep banging on about this, but center back for me is the most underwhelming position in the talent pool. None of these guys, Richards, Ream, Carter Vickers, McKenzie, are that good. So somebody new has to emerge between now and 26 to make us feel good about that center of the fence. So this might have been a chance to give somebody different an opportunity. Hopefully he does it against New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. So I'm glad we saw a new goalkeeper in Schulte. It sounded like Matt Turner was maybe going to start versus New Zealand and Cincinnati. I'm kind of like, let's see somebody new. That, ultimately, if you don't have the coach right now in Pochettino and you're not building towards a core and establishing a team and an identity, let's see some new guys. What's the point of these games otherwise? I don't care about the games other than that. I would rather give the opportunity to guys that are hungry. Aiden Morris, I'd like to see him. He's off to a great start in Middlesbrough right now in the championship. Josh Sargent, who I have long felt could take that number 9 position. He had a really unfortunate injury right before the Copa América. I do think Greg Berhalter really liked Sargent. He was the starter in the World Cup till he rolled his ankle. So him, Balogun's been underwhelming for me. Haji Wright is... Johnny has been very disappointing in his limited opportunities with the U.S. He's an interesting player to me. I don't know where you guys stand, and I know you watch a lot of him, Mosse. He's a player to me that in a good team surrounded by good players, he looks really good because he does the simple things well, and he can set the tempo of the game. He's a good passer. He reads the game. But when a game's a little bit tougher and you maybe don't have those guys around you that are thinking in the same way and playing the same style, I think you get a lot of what you've seen with him with the U.S., which is a guy that looks a little lost and indecisive and second-guessing himself, taking extra touches. So I haven't been too impressed with him. So, yeah, gosh, man, I could keep going here. But
And would you rank Sargent above Pepe in the pecking order? The reason I ask is that I continue to say from a roster construction standpoint, to keep calling up 3 center forwards plus Haji Wright feels like overkill to me. At some point, you got to make a decision, 2 out of the 3 of Balogun, Pepe, and Sargent.
Especially when we play with one. We play with one striker. So I know Haji can play wide, and so could Sargent, and probably so could Balogun, but it does seem a little insane that we're playing in that way.
All right. Well, we did grumpy old man it to a certain extent, and it's okay.
But I think that's necessary, right?
Exactly.
In this moment,
it is necessary.
But I think we're being fair.
Exactly. And you hit on the thing that I think ultimately is the most important. And by the time you're listening to this or watching this, Mauricio Pochettino very well could have been named the head coach. And, we've talked about the things that he has to do and the limitations that he has, both in terms of, if you just watched this last game, he will have gotten a stark realization of what the realities are, both good and bad, in terms of the talent that he has. Also, a very short period of time. You guys both mentioned the competitive nature or lack of competitive nature to this game. Well, that's not changing because the U.S. isn't qualifying for a World Cup. And yes, we have the Gold Cup next summer, but let's be honest, a Gold Cup is a Gold Cup. So it's always going to be friendly games. So Christian Pulisic and company are going to have to manufacture the commitment and the seriousness of games that are friendlies. And Pochettino is also going to come in and have to say, look, yes, they are friendlies, and yes, they, quote unquote, don't mean anything, but you bet your ass they mean something in terms of players that are going to be here with me in this national team that are going to get the ultimate privilege of representing the U.S. in a home World Cup in the summer of 26. And if you don't bring it, you are gone. We've talked time and time again, there can be no sacred cows. He has got to make sure that he kicks them in the butt if that's what they need, pats them on the back if that's what they need, but they recognize that they have a responsibility and they can be better. And ultimately, whether it's us three up here, anybody that's listening, anybody that's watching, what do we want? We want to believe in this team. And we are less than 2 years away. As we sit here today, like 640 days until the World Cup in 2026. Why this year and a half out, a little bit more than a year and a half out, are we here with this angst and this existential crisis of who we are as a men's national team? That shouldn't be the case. We should be roaring right now. We should be so excited about what's coming. Not necessarily we're going to win the cup. Maybe, who knows? But we should be so much more positive. And yet we find ourselves here critical, angst-ridden, depressed, sad, angry about this team. And that is a failure. That is a failure of leadership off the field when it comes to the United States Soccer Federation, and that is a failure of leadership and performance on the field when it comes to this group of players, who I will say again, have been given absolutely everything over these years. And I'm happy. I'm happy that they've been given everything. That, we were talking about Alex Morgan, leaving something, legacy, all that kind of stuff. Well, we're at a point right now where they have so many more advantages, so many more pathways, so many more resources. But with that comes added responsibility and much higher expectations. And they, unfortunately, at this point, are not living up to those expectations. And it's affecting us. It's affecting us psychologically. It's affecting us mentally, maybe even affecting us physically out there. I want to believe. Pochettino, come in and make us believe that this is a team that is worth our time. This is a team that is worth our heart going into 2026.
Well, I was going to transition to Mexico because I think what you said applies to Mexico too. But if you have any lingering thoughts on the U.S.,
I don't know. I'm listening to this man rant, and so many thoughts going through my head. And Lex, I'm with you. I think the hardest thing for all of us, and I hope I'm speaking for the fan base, media, even the players themselves to an extent, is what you're saying is make us believe. Pochettino, show us that this is there. I think the hardest thing to contextualize and know truly are the expectations that we have built up ourselves, the media, the fans, the players, for what we thought this team could be, is that unrealistic? And can they do it? And when the dust settles at the end of the day, after 2026, do we look back on this generation of players that we fell in love with the brand names and the clubs that they were playing at without really lifting up the carpet and looking underneath and seeing all the junk that had been swept, which is perhaps the truth, that maybe these guys are not as good as we thought they were, and they're not really playing that much at their teams, and none of them are really the leaders or the big players outside of Pulisic. And even Weston McKennie's a bit part player for Juventus right now. He's in the squad. I mean, how many guys, 1 to 23 in our pool right now, would you say are a top 5 player in their team in Europe?
Christian.
It's one guy.
Maybe Jedi.
Jedi is a good one.
Yep.
Yeah. So Jedi and Christian. So I don't know. I want to believe, man. I really do. But I'm just keep with every game and every day that goes by and every performance that I see, I'm coming back to the place of like, I don't know. I don't think we're as good as we thought we were.
Yeah. I don't think we're Pollyanna. I don't think we're delusional in expecting and wanting more. But to your point, maybe we have to readjust expectations going forward. But something is un-American about that.
I know. I feel dirty saying it.
All right, Mosse, let's go over to some other things.
Let's go to Mexico. It's fun to beat up on them here.
Well, so
hey, exactly. It might be bad, but it's not Mexico bad.
Yeah, it was a lousy crowd in Kansas City for the U.S. game. Also, Mexico are facing the same opponents as the U.S. in reverse. Saturday night, they played New Zealand at the Rose Bowl. They won 3-0. Former Mallorca boss Javier Aguirre beginning another spell on the Mexico bench. Pineda, Huerta, and Romo got the goals. But the big story here, only 25,000 at the Rose Bowl for this game. I've never seen so many empty seats for a Mexico game in the U.S. And it got me thinking, loyalty can sometimes be an overrated quality in a fan base because how you hold your teams accountable is through apathy. And I've wondered, how much more crap are Mexico fans in this country going to put up with before they stop packing the stadium for these friendlies and screaming "Si se puede" and all the rest? And we finally might have reached that tipping point after going out in the group stage of the World Cup, out in the group stage of the Copa America, failing to qualify for the Olympics, struggling in the Nations League, getting dominated by the U.S., all the coaching changes, the dysfunction with the federation. And maybe Mexican fans have reached the point where you have to earn our support. And maybe this cash cow that the Mexican Federation has counted on all these years has finally dried up. What do you think? Am I making too much of it?
I think it's a very interesting conversation. I think there's a lot of layers to it. I absolutely do think that at a point, there have been so many games. There's no mistake. I mean, Mexico is the premier national team in terms of drawing attendance and ticket sales in the United States because of the amount of games that they've had and they continue to have. So I think the novelty is worn off where it was like, hey, Mexico's playing in our town. Any Mexican within about 100 miles was going to come and make that game. I think now they're like, we see our national team so often. That part has come off. I do think that people have had ticket fatigue, price fatigue coming off of the Copa America, where the ticket prices, as we all know, were very high by CONMEBOL. I think fans felt a little cheated off of that, and then seeing both the U.S. and Mexico go out in the group stage. So there's a little bit of dynamic. They just played here back, a month or so ago at SoFi Stadium. So now they're at the Rose Bowl. It was about 120 degrees out there as well. So I don't know if the cash cow is fully dried up, but I do think that the Mexican fans, there's an element of like, hey, win us back over. Show us something that we should believe in because we're tired of getting beat up.
Yeah, we've long talked about the ATM that is the United States, not just for Mexico, for a lot of teams over here, but certainly for Mexico and the amount of games that they play over here. And, it's smart because there's a huge, huge audience. It will be interesting to see in the next window when the United States plays in Mexico, in Guadalajara, what that game looks like. Obviously, a big rival going on right now. But, I think the fan base is much more educated, much more discerning than it has been necessarily in the past. A glut of games that you have, and the nationalism that is associated with these types of games, that only gets you so far. You can celebrate Mexico and you can celebrate your Mexican heritage in so many other ways that aren't as expensive and that aren't necessarily going to break your heart at this point regarding the quality of Mexico. And again, while we talk about being less than 2 years away from the World Cup, and hosting a World Cup, the same goes for Mexico, and the same goes for Canada. Right now, Canada, if you're power ranking them right now relative to 2026, it's Canada. I guess it would be U.S. and then Mexico.
And Mexico's next game, they face Canada at AT&T Stadium Tuesday. I'm curious to see the crowd for that, and I'm curious to see the result. Imagine if Jesse Marsch beats the U.S. and Mexico back-to-back in this window.
Oh, all right. You want to fly through some Nations League stuff here, Mosse?
Yes. UEFA Nations League going on. Portugal have already played both their games in this window. They picked up a pair of 2-1 home wins over Croatia and Scotland. Ronaldo scored in both games. He started and scored against Croatia, came off the bench and scored against Scotland. The conversation heading into this window was, why is he still around? 39 years old, coming off of terrible Euros. We talked about it last week on the pod. To be fair, that was my take. That was your take on our pregame show. And then, lo and behold, Ronaldo goes out and does what he does. Warren Barton, who called the game, was downright hostile, attacking Ronaldo critics.
Passive-aggressive.
Yeah, how dare anybody suggest he should step away? I thought that was clearly directed at you and Alexi.
Yes, I felt that too, yeah.
So what do you think? Did these Ronaldo goals change your mindset at all? Where are you with Ronaldo in Portugal right now?
I haven't changed. In the Ronaldo-Messi back and forth over the years, I have always come down on the side of Ronaldo. Having said that,
really,
I think they are in very different positions relative to their national teams. I think that Ronaldo sucks the oxygen out of the room, as would any huge, huge star. And he has incredible cachet, and he has incredible power relative to his new coach, in this case, Roberto Martinez, and the Portuguese Federation. He's not going to go until he wants to go. And if you have the ability to convince him that either he needs to go or he needs to accept a whole nother role, and that's another whole thing if he wants to be a substitute, and this is Cristiano Ronaldo we're talking about, easier said than done. Roberto Martinez has had now multiple times where nobody would have begrudged him saying, this is it, that's the end of the line. Sit him down, say, I'm the new coach here, but we're going to go in a new direction. Decided not to do that. To your point, this summer, Euros, it wasn't great. And so you have another opportunity after that not great moment to say no longer. In the same way that, let's be honest, when it comes to Alex Morgan, you said, all right, it's not happening anymore from a national team perspective. We're moving in a different direction. You could do the same thing. He didn't sit down and do that. And so now we're left with a situation where he's not going anywhere, but can you convince him that coming off the bench is the best look for him and for this Portuguese team? I don't know if you're able to do that, but he showed if this is the path, if this is the prototype of what you want from a 2024 and beyond Cristiano Ronaldo, it works pretty well because he came on, he was fired up. But is he coming on, he's fired up because he's relishing this new role or because he was pissed off that he wasn't starting in the game?
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
But look, it's the hardest thing for an athlete, especially at the level of Ronaldo and Messi. But I don't care who you are. Father Time is undefeated. And even for a chiseled specimen with a 16-pack like Ronaldo at his age, there will come a time where physically he cannot do it. And I think that's what you see when you look at the stats. Do you have the stats off the top of your head about how many international games at major tournaments without a goal from?
So major tournaments, World Cup and Euros, it's 0 goals in last 9 matches, 0 goals in last 712 minutes, 0 goals in last 30 shots.
So look, that says enough for me to say that he should be coming off the bench. And it's a great example of a guy who is very fit, but also is playing at a lesser level now at the Saudi Pro League than playing in the European League. So the intensity is less. The speed of the game is slower. He's still able to score a lot of goals. He's insanely talented. He's one of the best to do it. His quality will never leave. But when the game's not a friendly game, not a Nations League, when the games are at their highest intensity with the most stakes in the biggest moments, he has proven that he's not been able to do it in these international tournaments for Portugal. So had he come off the bench in these games and had he been able to add an extra, 100% with his abilities and having energy, ability, team tired, and to find the goals like he did the other day against Scotland, I think he could be insanely more effective. The part of the conversation that is tricky is convincing him that's your role, him being okay and understanding that that's where I'm most effective, and not being a bad teammate as a part of that, and understanding I still want to be a part of this Portuguese national team. I still want to experience the World Cup again one more time in 26, but I need to do it off the bench and allow other players to have their moments. I do think he can still play at this level. I do think he has the quality. I just don't think he should be a starter because he's hurting the team.
Now, when you said Ronaldo over Messi superfan Fran Arthur almost threw up her lunch over there, so she's going to love this next topic. Ronaldo was asked if the reason he's sticking around is to try to win the World Cup because it's the only trophy missing from his resume, and he said, winning a Euros with Portugal is the equivalent of winning a World Cup, so I don't feel like there's anything missing from my resume. Now, most people viewed Messi winning the World Cup as a debate ender in the whole Messi versus Ronaldo thing. This is the first time I've ever seen Ronaldo try to mount a counter argument. We know a lot of Europeans think it's harder to win the Euros and the World Cup. Mbappe said that this past summer, and Portugal had never won anything before they won that Euros with Ronaldo, while Argentina had won multiple World Cups before Messi. So what do you think? Is there an argument that Ronaldo winning that Euros, when you look at their careers side by side, that actually cancels out Messi's World Cup?
Okay, so put Ronaldo on Argentina and put Messi on Portugal. Is it does one side Ronaldo on Argentina? I think wins just as much. Not just as much. I think wins more. All right, I think he has more to work with.
Poor Ronaldo with Portugal.
I'm not saying
goodness,
poor, but
their team is stacked.
Who?
Portugal.
Jota? Because if Ronaldo's not starting up top, Jota's starting up top.
Jota plays at Liverpool, one of the best clubs in the world.
But he's better than Cristiano Ronaldo?
I'm not saying he's better than Ronaldo.
That's the whole point.
No.
Argentina.
But I'm
Messi
saying
doesn't have to be on the field, and it's still the number 1 team in the world.
No, come on. Messi scored how many goals in the World Cup? 7 goals to take them to the title?
Exactly. He's wonderful.
So without Messi at the World Cup in Qatar, Argentina don't win the World Cup.
Okay.
No way.
Okay.
No way.
So bottom line, you don't buy that Ronaldo argument at all.
No, well, it makes sense now why Alexi loves Ronaldo to take a take on something and argue it to the death and have full-fledged belief in it, just something so insane. That's why he loves Ronaldo.
Oh my goodness! Hey, listen, we're droning on here, and I know Mosse wants to talk about Brazil.
Wait a minute, what are you talking about? We've got several nations. We're going long today.
We are
it's a
going
long
long.
pod.
Okay,
Long pods
fine.
are the best pod.
You know, people scream and yell. We have all of these eggheads and nerds back there, okay? And they're constantly telling me, you got to keep it short. Don't bore us. Get to the chorus. Get it through. Get it under an hour and stuff like that. And
this has all been chorus so far.
Look, the data shows that they're absolutely right. I love them. I respect them. But to your point, we have stuff to talk about here. And I don't want to shortchange any of the stories that we have out there for our listeners, but the reality is we got to move it along.
Another Nations League game we covered took place in Dublin on Saturday. England claimed a 2-0 away win over the Republic of Ireland. Declan Rice and Jack Grealish got the goals, the two players who spurned Ireland to play for England internationally. Declan Rice did not celebrate. Jack Grealish did. I know you hate this whole idea of players not celebrating goals, and this one really pissed you off.
You chose, I'm talking about Declan Rice here, you chose to play for England, okay? Not because of money, but because this was the team. No, not the team. This was the country that you wanted to play for. This was the country that you wanted to represent. I don't understand it. I do understand having respect and having thanks for other countries. If you're a dual national, if you're a multinational, whatever it ends up being, and especially if you've been in the system before. But ultimately, you have to make a choice. It is tribal. I get that. And in this moment, I just think that you're cheating the fans that paid money to go to the game. Because again, if you never celebrate a goal, fine. But he made a point of not celebrating the goal and gesticulating in a way so everybody knew, no, I'm not going to celebrate this goal for the team and for the country that I chose to represent. That's not what international soccer is about. That's not what representing your country on the international stage is about. So yes, it was irritating to me to see it.
I happen to agree with you 100%, Stu. Will you make it 3 for 3?
No, I think he's grumpy old manning this. It's look, if it would be one thing to me if he didn't try hard or he didn't want to score against Republic of Ireland. He played a phenomenal game, Declan Rice, and I think that is the respect that he gives to his country that he now represents in England, in that he scored a goal, he gave them joy. They don't care if he celebrates or not. He scored the goal. So did Grealish. Those guys had phenomenal games. So one chose to celebrate, one chose not to celebrate, but they both delivered moments that would fill their nation with pride. And the fact that he didn't celebrate is, again, it is a sign of respect for, having represented Ireland at one point.
I get to your point.
So.
It's a sign of respect, and you can play it either way. It's a sign of respect for the team that nurtured you from a young age, or it's a sign of disrespect from the team for the team that you chose. I just think that and I think it also perpetuates the thought that you are a mercenary in this, and that we see these players that are choosing different places because of their background, because of their parents, because of where they grew up, or just because of their grandparents or something like that, and they choose. And then this is a much more cynical way of looking at it, because there's more opportunity for them to play, or there's a better future, it's a better team around them, and all that kind of stuff. So it just rubbed me the wrong way, which was why I was so excited only a few minutes later when Jack Grealish, who has the same situation where he chose to play for England, not only scored, but then went and celebrated. And I know that's kind of who he is. Yeah, it's his personality of poking and doing all that kind of stuff. But it filled me, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, it filled me with a sense of pride for England that they had a player in that moment doing that.
Incidentally, England do not have a coach. Southgate stepped down after the Euros. Lee Carsley right now, managing them on an interim basis. Lee Carsley, by the way, a former Republic of Ireland international. There were so many connections this weekend.
Oh, he was getting some stick too for the fact that he didn't sing the English national anthem, and
But
I mean,
England,
people are going to be outraged about anything. Hello, Alexi.
they were briefly linked with Pochettino, and now what you're hearing with England is, Pep is in the last year of his Manchester City contract, and there's some thought they might stick with Lee Carsley for a year and wait out Pep and see if they can get him. Now, as a Brazilian, I can tell you this whole waiting out a club coach thing, can be very risky. They better have something signed and sealed with Pep because he could change his mind as Ancelotti did. But nevertheless, that would be interesting. How about City getting hit with all those charges? Pep leaves almost like Jim Harbaugh fleeing to the NFL and he takes over the England.
The English media's heads would explode.
Wow.
That would be fun, though.
Oh, my goodness. All right, Mosse, now can we go to something else, or you still want to talk about some more stuff?
We were going to mention Denmark-Serbia just to show the Yusuf Poulsen bike goal, but do you want to skip that since we're running
it's
late?
a bike, so you can see it, and we posted it, and everybody saw it.
I just
want
to mention a couple more before we leave. Right now, France are hosting Belgium. Big game. It's 1-0 France. Colomboani with the goal. Mbappe on the bench for this one, by the way. France looking to bounce back from home loss to Italy the other day. And tomorrow, massive game. The Netherlands will face Germany. They both scored 5 this past weekend. Germany 5-0 over Hungary. Netherlands 5-2 over Bosnia and Herzegovina, much to the chagrin of my friend Sanya, who's from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Those two now collide at Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam on Tuesday. A lot of history there. They're neighbors, they're rivals. 1974 World Cup final, 1990 World Cup. Frank Rijkaard spitting on Rudi Voller. Netherlands, Germany. Does that excite you?
Oh, yeah. Look, the Netherlands are in a good moment right now. They had a good Euro. I also think Germany are back in a way. I'm interested to see what they can do now with an eye on 2026 under Nagelsmann, because they lost to eventual champions in the Euro of Spain. That game went to extra time. They looked fluid in the attack. They have some of the probably the up there in one of the brightest attacks in the entire world right now between Musiala and Wirtz, and Füllkrug's an out-and-out goal scorer. So they've got a lot of talent. I'm interested in them. I'm kind of with you. We talked about this a little bit in the Nations League. I'm still not sure how good the Dutch really are when it comes down to it. I think they got a little fortunate with the side of the draw that they ended up in, the teams they played against, but they also have a good team. So that should be a fun match.
All right. Now.
Another massive game. Another massive game on Tuesday takes place in Barranquilla as we finally transition to South American
I've never
World Cup
teased a
qualifying.
segment more than I've just done with this.
Colombia,
this better be good.
Colombia will host Argentina in a rematch of the Copa América Final, which you covered in Miami. 1-0 Argentina in extra time. Lautaro Martinez.
How many fans are going to be there?
Messi picked up an ankle injury in that game. Hasn't played since. He's out for this one. Di Maria retired. They honored him the other night after beating Chile 3-0. McAllister, Alvarez, and Dybala with the goals. Colombia drew Peru 1-1 that same night. Argentina first in South American World Cup qualifying. Colombia third. Thoughts on this one?
Monster game. I love the Colombian team right now under Nestor Lorenzo. I thought they were so impressive during the Copa America. I thought they've been so impressive in qualifying. They will be a force at the World Cup in 26. And then for Argentina, look, this is a moment for, once again, Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez to show that they can carry the torch up front without Lionel Messi. But I've been so impressed, or continue to be so impressed, with Argentina's ability just to roll through every team, not lose steam. They're so organized. They are everything that they do is they are ruthless. I think that's the best way to describe them, was that even going back to the last time that they faced in the Copa América final, the game was close. Colombia had chances. There was just never a moment in that game where I felt like Argentina were going to lose it. But going on the road to Colombia, they are going to be charged up for this game, and that one should be a lot of fun.
Okay.
Quick correction. Argentina's game against Chile was Thursday. Peru-Colombia was Friday. So Argentina do get an extra day's rest, which could be big. It's going to be hot and steamy in Barranquilla. That should be a fun one. You mentioned the coaches. Do you know 7 of the 10 CONMEBOL coaches are Argentinians right now? It's absolutely crazy.
We're about to hire one.
Yeah, it's Argentina Scaloni, Uruguay Bielsa, Colombia Nestor Lorenzo, Ecuador with Becca Sesnau, Paraguay with Alfaro, Venezuela Batista, Chile Gareca. It's
a good
unbelievable.
stat, yeah.
7
What's in the
of
water?
the
What's in the
10.
coaching licenses down there?
Wow. I really hope that Argentina is going to be able to find a way to get a result without Messi. So
Now, also in CONMEBOL, two middling teams that are battling for those last qualification spots meet in Asunción. Paraguay will host Brazil. Should be another entertaining one.
Oh, what's your Brazil take here? They were
Goodness.
once again underwhelming against Ecuador the other day.
So we beat Ecuador 1-0. As soon as the match goes final, my phone rings. It's my father. Pick up, and he says, "Just when I didn't think things could get worse."
What, that you answered?
Yeah, him and I were like, we're suddenly pining for those Copa America performance.
Oh, my
Now
gosh.
you called that quarterfinal against Uruguay, which is one of the worst soccer
terrible.
matches ever played.
Terrible.
The second half against Ecuador the other night might have been worse than that.
Say, like, just disjointed and lack of
Just a
ideas
kick
in
fest.
the final third, and yeah.
Absolutely.
all right, but your head's exploding. You and your father's head's exploding right now. Put it in perspective here. Are you worried that your Brazil team is not going to qualify for the 48-team World Cup in 2026? Or is it just simply that you'll qualify and then you're worried that you're going to be embarrassed on the international stage, the likes of which we have never seen a Brazilian team be embarrassed?
Yeah, closer to the second thing. I think we'll probably eke out enough results to qualify, but it's kind of sad that I have to say, because of the expanded field, Brazil have probably become one of the great beneficiaries of the World Cup being expanded. If it was only 4 automatic spots, I would not feel good about it at all. Incidentally, that match you called against Uruguay in the Copa America quarterfinals, that was Endrick's first ever start for Brazil. It looks like he's going to make his second. The latest reports are he's going to start. He didn't play at all against Ecuador the other night, which Dorival Jr. was criticized for, and it looks like he's going to hand Endrick a start here away to Paraguay on Tuesday, so we'll see if he can give Brazil a spark.
Oh, again, I feel so bad for Brazil.
We'll take a couple of those guys.
I really hope they can get it together. All right, shall we finish up this massive segment with maybe a little MLS talk, Mosse?
Yes, there was MLS this weekend, a couple of interesting games we've highlighted. Seattle went into Columbus and won 4-0. Now, Columbus had only one goalkeeper available, Romero, who started because, remember, Patrick Schulte is in international duty. They had other guys injured. And lo and behold, Romero gets himself sent off late in the first half. So Zawadski had to get in there. Zawadski, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Zawadski, yeah. He's doing his Mike McGee impression. And conceded straight away off the free kick.
Yes. Rusnak with a hat trick. Jordan Morris got the other. So Seattle now in good position to make the playoffs in the West. And I mentioned last week I thought Columbus was the only threat to Inter Miami for the Supporters Shield. I think that's over and done with. So Inter Miami will win the Supporters Shield. Columbus
is still good. And, Wilfred Nancy screamed and yelled after the game about the situation and was yelling about it, to Don Garber and folks up at MLS HQ for the situation that they created relative to the goalkeeping travesty and fiasco that it was out there. This is a game that they can just throw away and move on. And I think Seattle would say the same thing. But you play whoever's in front of you, and MLS chooses to play through international windows, not all international windows, but some international windows, and even teams have the ability in some windows to be able to choose whether they're going to play through it. So if you really don't like it, talk to your owner, scream and yell at your owner, and have that owner scream and yell at the owners.
Alexi, it does, and this is probably for a not such a long pod segment, but for another day. It does bring up the discussion, though, which is becoming more and more prevalent now in Major League Soccer and the construction of rosters, but also the flexibility within that. You have all these academies and the MLS Next Pros teams, but there's a limitation on how many times you can move guys up and down, and the increased competitions, the introduction of the Leagues Cup, the MLS pulling out in some ways of the Open Cup, and all these different things. They need to have more flexibilities within the rosters to be able to handle. This is a great example of that type of moment. They'd already used, 4 different up and downs between goalies. 2 were on international. It was a perfect storm, but I just think it's going to bring more attention to the fact that as MLS continues to grow, they play in more competitions, they spend more money. They need to have more flexibilities within the rosters to allow coaches, GMs, et cetera, to handle these amount of games.
But as you give them more flexibility, you have to recognize and accept the fact that there is going to be more competitive advantage from team to team. And that's something that they have guarded on since 1996 when the league started. So
open it up.
All right. Well, let's see it. If you open it up, recognize that there are going to be those that surge forward and those that are left behind. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. But that's not what this league was predicated on in terms of this the structure. So there's this constant push and pull that we talk about constantly. Speaking of coaches screaming and yelling. Did either of you see the rant from Caleb Porter over there in New England?
Yeah, New England and St. Louis tied 2-2. Caleb Porter very unhappy afterwards.
He was very unhappy. It was interesting because some of it was subjective, and coaches don't like when a handball is called or isn't called. And he was screaming about how this was, in his eyes, an absolute clear handball. This is still a subjective type of thing, and I get it. He's frustrated. But also he screamed and yelled about the new rule that was implemented in Major League Soccer where a player has 10 seconds to leave the field. And in this moment, his player, a New England player, took 14 seconds. Therefore, they were penalized where he had to sit off of the field for a period of time. Within that period of time, the opposition scored. Now, part of the reason why this rule was implemented was to stop players with the dark arts and delaying the game. The counter to that oftentimes was, yes, but how are you going to assess how injured or not injured somebody actually is? And are you going to mandate that an injured player actually drag himself or run off the field? I'm sorry, but this is the way the rule is going to work, and you have to find a way off of the field. Ultimately, Caleb Porter is going to get fined. He'll take the fine. He recognizes he made his point. He had his moment, and he had his rant. And in his case, they lost points to St. Louis. But it's fun to see these coaches recognize that they're going to get fined, but still believe that it's worth that fine to get this information out and to get us all talking about these things. Anything MLS-wise, either of you, before we head out in this segment? Yes? No? Nothing? Oh, good. You guys don't want to talk anymore. Fine. Perfect. Well, that means that we can take a little break, and when we come back, we will have the Ask Alexi segment. Yes, if you're still around with us. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. And keep in mind that our social media platforms out there, our handle is SOTU with Alexi, and you can use that hashtag Ask Alexi as you're sending those comments, questions, and concerns. Or you can call our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Mosse, what are we going to talk about today?
We have a question on X.
Okay.
Vert the Mad asks, shouldn't they hire someone like Jim Curtin as an assistant with an eye on knowing the player pool, who to keep an eye on domestically or otherwise, someone who can do these things with existing awareness of the American game? Not saying I'm opposed to these guys at all. LOL. He's obviously alluding to the fact that the U.S. men's national team is about to hire Mauricio Pochettino. It sounds like he's going to bring his whole backroom staff with him. But should there be an American like a Jim Curtin on the staff as well to help with the American stuff?
Who did Dougie Mack report that Pochettino's bringing?
Oh, I could read you the names, but it's just his.
It's just
his,
all the guys that he has had,
jobs. Yeah.
and obviously those aren't domestic type of players.
Right.
And so I think that's what he's alluding to here. Look, if it's Pochettino or anybody else, I want you to be comfortable. As far as I'm concerned, anytime you hire a new coach, I think you have to give national team or a club coach, you have to give them the opportunity and the ability to bring in the coaches around them that they feel comfortable. And so if you're an assistant coach and the head coach gets fired, you should be packing your bags, because that's normally how things are done. In this particular case, with a national team program, and in this particular case with the U.S., would I like to see someone that has a connection? Yes. I know there's people that are watching and listening out there and saying, that's the problem, is the connections that they've had. And whether it's nepotism or the old boys network or all that kind of stuff. And maybe there's a case to be made that you kind of have to absolutely cut it off and not have anybody that's had any type of history and association with U.S. soccer. However, we've already talked about the amount of time or the lack of time that anybody that comes in is going to have. And so you're going to have to get it up to speed very, very quickly. You can say, well, it's just soccer. You can figure it out. Okay, that's true. But we all know that American soccer is a very unique animal. And having some intrinsic knowledge, having some people that have been there, having some people that can steer you in the right direction so that you're not wasting time, maybe that would be prudent for someone like Mauricio Pochettino. Or he says, you know what? We're just going to rely on that knowledge that we have from doing it at the highest level and people kicking a soccer ball. It just happens to be Americans kicking a soccer ball at this point, and we'll have the best team that we possibly can get, and we'll figure it out as we go along. But I don't think that, someone, I've talked about Jim Curtin as being, in my in the way that I think about things, a candidate for the national team. I would have absolutely no problem if Pochettino asked Jim Curtin, and I think Jim Curtin has talked about him saying, yeah, I would love to have that honor of being on the coaching staff here. I don't think he's going to do that. If he did it, it would surprise me and would make me very, very happy.
So I think that everything that Vert the Mat is talking about here and referencing here, and what you're talking about in terms of understanding the player pool, and I think that should come from the sporting side of U.S. soccer. And that's what Matt Crocker and Oguchi Onyewu, who was a part of the national team for a long time, his assistant, I think that's what they're there to provide. And I'm thinking about the dynamics of having somebody like Jim Curtin on the coaching staff and what that would do. I absolutely see the benefits in having a familiarity and a relationship with the players and maybe being the link between he and Pochettino. But on the other side, I don't want that. I don't want to have somebody on that staff that all the players, are afraid to go talk to Pochettino and Perez because they know they can talk to Jim and Jim will do it, or whoever that is, right? I think that there needs to be, with this group, a feeling of uncomfortability and unfamiliarity and a bit of pressure that puts it on them, and not what they felt before, which was easy and comfortable. And we know Greg and we know BJ and we have a big smiles, has a great time. Like, I want them walking into that first day of camp being like, man, I got to show up and I got to prove that I need to be the guy in this practice. So that's what
new sheriff in town.
That's what I want. I want the new sheriff in town, new staff, new everything. And let those dynamics unfold the way that Pochettino has let it be with his previous teams. Because from all accounts, he's tactically very savvy, but also he can be a player's coach, and he understands how to bring a group together, what he did with Tottenham especially. So that's what I hope. I don't want right now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have an American on staff or as a part of that, but I would like Pochettino to come in with his crew and be like, let's go. Here we go.
All right, yeah, I guess it is time for one for the road. So we will take a quick break, and when we come back, we will give you my one for the road. Okay, welcome back. Yeah, it's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. So roll the van. Okay, well, there was your van. So it is time for my one for the road. When it comes to American soccer, nobody rebrands like we do. We brand and then we rebrand, sometimes even in the same year when it comes to our American soccer teams. We come up, as we said, on this Monday, September 9th in the year 2024, and we find ourselves with yet another rebrand from the good folks over there in New York. NYCFC has rebranded. And look, I'm a sucker for a rebrand. When I was with the Galaxy, not only did we rebrand, but we rebranded right in the middle of a year. Sometimes it can go great, and you improve on what you have, and you refresh, and you renew, and you excite people. Sometimes it doesn't go so great. I'm looking at you, Chicago or Columbus or different people out there. And so you got to tweak it, and you got to go in and fix it. But ultimately, again, you're almost reintroducing yourself. When it comes to this new brand at NYCFC, there's a Yankees-esque type of feel that they have gone for, and then their original logo and brand there. They've just kind of fattened it up and simplified it, and I actually like that. I think the old brand was a little bit like Miami, to be quite honest with you, was a little busy, if you will. So I think that when it comes to brands, I think this one is going to stick, and I think that they have done a good job. It's not a complete departure from what we have seen before, but well done to NYCFC. And NYCFC is kind of on a roll here when it comes to the stuff off the field, with the stadium coming into focus after all of these years. So that's going to be good going forward. So well done to NYCFC. And who knows, by the time you're listening to this, there might have been another rebrand from another team. Or who knows, maybe NYCFC has rebranded all within a day. Anything before we go, Stu Holden? And thank you for hanging out with us today.
I'm always love to get the call from you guys to join the pod. I don't have anything to add on a rebrand and a brand and a rebrand.
Has Mallorca ever rebranded?
We have not. I don't know. Maybe someday.
Ripe for a rebrand.
American owners, we should come in and just rebrand everything. That's what they love in Europe. When you stomp all over history, they really love that. That's
the Mallorca faithful would love that. Oh, I can't wait to see that. Oh, the Americans, they're coming in and they're changing everything and all that kind of stuff. Well,
Lex, did
yes.
you see? I know we're long, but I have
It's
to get
okay
this
at
in.
this point.
I mean, if anybody's here right now, they're a junkie. So let's
Right.
just keep lighting the candle.
Did you see late last week, The Ringer wrote a piece chronicling Fox Sports' pursuit of Tom Brady?
Yes.
And it was an excellent piece. Everybody should check it out. And they mentioned that Fox likes to hire 3 different types of commentators. Either young guys coming up. Evidently, they hired Joe Buck and Joel Klatt, people like that when they were very young, just starting out. People who are undervalued by other networks. And then there's a third kind, which is the quote-unquote big swing, super big name. And they cited as examples Tom Brady, obviously, people like Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez. And Carly Lloyd got a mention in the piece as an example of a big swing that Fox took. But this weekend, Judy Boyd and I were trying to figure out which category you guys fit into of those
man.
3.
I would have put Lex in the big swing. You know, I mean, you were the ESPN guy all those years, and you were the face of
maybe
our
there's
coverage.
a 4th category of somebody that nobody else will take. Bottom of the barrel category. I don't know where we fall in that. I will say when it comes to Tom Brady, it's almost a no-win type of proposition with him. I thought he did fine as a great man once told us here at Fox, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think he's only going to get better. By all accounts, he's done a whole lot of work, and that's important. You know, we always talk about the iceberg type of situation where all the work's done underneath, and even though you don't see it, it's there, and it gives you stability for ultimately what does appear on air. And I think he's going to get better and better with each week. But he's also Tom Brady, so no matter what knives are going to be out, no matter what, somebody is going to find something wrong with either what he said or the way that he said it. But I will say, I mean, and you guys know a whole lot more about football than I do, but when the Tony Romo thing happened, right, and he came on with all guns blazing, he's predicting everything, you kind of have nowhere to go when you do that. So it's almost as if, he came out, he didn't falter. I'm talking about Tom Brady. He wasn't the best thing since sliced bread. He also wasn't the worst thing that you've ever seen, and he gives himself something to grow. And I do know a little bit about his career and what he wasn't highly rated as a quarterback in terms of the pecking order in there. And he came in and he took his opportunity. He worked his ass off and ultimately became the GOAT. So maybe that's ultimately what is going to happen. Or he might not be the GOAT when it comes to broadcasting. And you know what? That's okay too.
He did play quarterback at the University of Michigan. I'll tell you, we could have used him this past weekend. He's a little better than the quarterbacks we trotted out for that Texas game.
My last comment on Brady, and maybe it's the end of the pod after this, but
okay.
I could not imagine the amount of pressure. Now, look, I know these guys are paid handsomely, and he's Tom Brady, and he's not struggling in all those respects, but for your very first time on air to come with that amount of scrutiny and attention and pressure. And look, by all accounts, and we've been in the building and we've seen the amount of work he has done now for the past 1.5, 2 years in preparation for this moment. But as we all know, what you do in practice is very different to when you actually flip that red light on and you go live for the very first time. Your body does weird things. Your mouth starts to get that cotton mouth and you feel the pressure and the intensity and all those different things. And it's hard to replicate actually doing it. And so all of that considered, if I look back at my very first tape and the very first time I broadcast, which was a Thursday night with John Strong, San Jose versus Chicago Fire at Buckshaw Stadium. I've got the tape. I'll show it to you unwillingly because it is terrible. I just cringe watching myself and thinking back to like somebody put me on TV like that and gave me the chance, and I was nowhere near ready for that. And I feel like I've grown a lot as a broadcaster since. So to think that like, and I'm not even saying that I thought Brady was bad. I was impressed with the stuff that he brought and the knowledge. And at the end of the day, he's Tom Brady. He's going to be excellent at this. And so I'm excited to continue to see his growth and the more comfortable he gets. And even in the difference I felt from the first half to the second half of how good he was.
Everything matters. It's not just what you say, it's how you look. I remember the first time I ever went on
Well,
air,
he looks good. He looks good.
I had a suit. Yeah, he had all these tailored suits. I had a suit that I looked like I was singing for the Talking Heads. This thing was huge. I was swimming in it. My wife, after that, she said, yeah, it was good. We need to get you some suits.
So what would you call this suit? Is this is this an evolution? I mean,
this is.
I kind of still,
It takes a village, my friend, and we have a village that makes me look halfway presentable. All right, listen, if you've hung out with us for the last 3 hours, thank you so much for doing it. keep reviewing, keep downloading, keep subscribing. Speaking of subscribing,
Smash that button.
Smash that button over there on the old YouTube channel and punch that button over there on Spotify and do all the different things that you do. Two-fisted. Stu likes a good two-fisted smash. Smash it, my friends. Smash it.
There's your meme. You've got a new meme.
Smash.
I'm downloading that
smash.
one straight away. Oh my gosh. Please go back and watch this clip if you're listening.
This is only the first State of the Union of the week here. We got another one coming up, and we do have a U.S. Game against New Zealand. We'll be doing spaces after that, so join us for that. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the